In this video, I wanted to see how far I could get in a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Emerald Kaizo. That's right, I've decided to attempt the most infamous, and some would say the most difficult, Pokémon ROM hack. Now, I'll be completely honest, I don't think I can beat this game in a reasonable amount of time, so instead, I've decided to give myself just 3 attempts to see how far I can get. Making any progress through this game, though, isn't going to be easy, because under my hardcore Nuzlocke rules, if a Pokémon faints, it's considered dead and must be released. I can also only catch the first encounter per area. The rest of the rules can be seen on screen now and in the description. With the rules out the way, let's jump right in to whatever hell I'm about to walk into. Remember to leave a like and subscribe to wish me luck. I'm gonna need it. So let's get this run started. And first things first, after being thrown out of our moving van, we've got to pick our starter. Now, instead of planning long term like I usually do, because I'm just trying to get as far as I can, I'm going to be focusing on whatever's in front of me. That immediately rules out Torchic, who would be the least useful starter against Roxanne and her rock types. That leaves Mudkip and Trico, and usually Mudkip is the stronger starter out of the two in the base Gen 3 games, but I'm thinking Trico's speed might be really useful, so welcome aboard, Crash. So with Crash, I'm able to start my journey through Real, and that means collecting our early game encounters. One change I've immediately noticed about this ROM hack is that grass seems to have been added to pretty much every town, meaning at the very least I should be able to build a team nice and fast. In Old Ale Town, for my first encounter, I find a Ponyta, which isn't actually awful. Next, heading onto Route 103, I can grab the fishing rod from this random fisherman, and that means heading back to Little Route, I can fish up my next encounter, a Love Disc. I haven't checked what Pokemon have received buffs and which haven't, but I'm really hoping this stupid Love Heart has gotten some sort of buff, otherwise I can't see Torna getting much use. Heading back to Route 103, because I always do things in a logical order, I'm able to find a Spearow I name Aku. I can't see Spearow being super useful before Roxanne, but maybe if we make it to Brawly, my bird will become useful. Onwards then onto Route 102, I find myself a Sandshrew I name Tiny. Tiny is adorable, so I'm not even going to complain if he turns out to be underwhelming. I'm able to make it to Petalburg, where I'm able to catch my second water type, a Squirtle I name Cortex. This early on, my focus is getting past Roxanne, so any grass or water types are a blessing. Before I can catch any more Pokemon though, I'm forced to watch a catching tutorial, because for some strange reason, despite the many changes from the base game, Emerald Kaizo hasn't cut this out. Very odd. I can't imagine anyone playing this game needs to be taught how to catch Pokemon, but hey, what do I know? Moving past Wally and his Rolts, I'm able to head onto Route 104 and find my first electric type, a Mareep I name Papu. Mareep is often a pretty dependable electric type, so he's a welcome addition to my ever-growing party. I then start heading north, and this guy is really excited about me playing Emerald Kaizo, I guess. Also, he can see me when he's not even on the screen. Right, lesson learned, this ROM hack isn't going to play fair. Eventually, I'm able to push past more annoying trainers and find my Petalburg Woods encounter. I'm actually lucky enough to find a Bellsprout. Why is Bellsprout useful? Well, because I can fuck it. I now have a grass type that's not weak to poison, which will be important later. As I'm making my way through Petalburg Woods, I run into my first real challenge, this Team Magma Grunt. Luckily, I've got enough Pokemon to handle his pretty varied team, but I do run into a teeny tiny issue. Tiny is able to take down the floating gas ball, but poison leaves him really low. That's fine though, as Houndour comes in, I can easily switch out and oh, Pursuit strikes again. Well, that's one Pokemon down, but it doesn't bode well that I've already lost somebody. Rest in peace, Tiny. Luckily, I'm able to get through the fight without losing anyone else, but that's not a good start. At the very least, I'm able to make it to Rustberry City without losing anyone else, despite a random cameo from Red. Why do I have to fight Red here? Who knows? Anyway, let's get our last few encounters before our first gym. Firstly, in Rustboro itself, I find a Seedot, which is great because it's another grass type I can throw at Roxanne. Next, heading north, I fish up a Kabuto, which means I have another water type. This is going well so far. Keep up with this kind of luck and I'll be set. Right, okay. Yanma isn't exactly what I was looking for when preparing for a rock type gym leader, but I suppose I can't expect all of my encounters to be useful. After fighting my way through a number of fairly difficult double battles, I'm able to eventually make it to Rustboro Tunnel for my last encounter, and inside the cave, I find the nosiest nose Pokemon, Nosepass. Often I'd be annoyed at getting such an ugly Pokemon, but Nosepass is surprisingly bulky, so this might be just what I need. With my last encounter caught then, I just have to battle my way through the gym trainers and evolve a few Pokemon, and then before we know it, we're ready for Roxanne and her rock types. Even with a plan, this is not going to be an easy fight, so let's go see if we can win our first gym battle of the run. So Roxanne starts off with her Nosepass, and I start off with Cortex. I'm gonna go a bit more in depth than I normally do and explain each of this gym fight's problems as they come up and how I plan to deal with them. So firstly, the Nosepass. This thing is really annoying because it's so bulky and has a citrus berry that will fully heal it once it's brought to below half. So because of the Nosepass's bulk and its citrus berry, there's no way I can kill this thing quick enough to avoid being paralyzed or worst case scenario exploded. That's why I've chosen Cortex here, as he's the most expendable member of my team going into this fight. So I start the fight with a water gun that just barely avoids activating the Nosepass's citrus berry. I then take a thunder wave, which is immediately cured by a cherry berry. That's actually perfect because if I get lucky here with a high roll or a crit, I can take down the Nosepass without being blown up or paralyzed, and Cortex actually pulls it off. I just got incredibly lucky to get the perfect damage rolls 2 times in a row, but I'm not going to complain. Second for Roxanne is Laleep, and this might be one of her most annoying Pokemon to deal with. Not only does its typing make it hard to hit for super effective damage with my current Pokemon, it also has really scary coverage. On top of this, it has Recover, making it even more annoying to KO, and it has Ancient Power, which means Laleep could just decide to end this run if it gets a couple of Omni boosts. I do have a plan to handle this annoying plant, Toxic Stalling, so I switch into Baby T on a Giga Drain. Without Baby T here, I'm not actually sure what I could do against this stupid thing because I wouldn't have anything that could take a Poison Jab or a Giga Drain. Thank God for Baby T then, because on the following turn, I can safely take an Ancient Power before landing a Toxic. I then start switching between Grovyle, Weeping Bell, and Nosepass until the Laleep starts going through Recover. Because I don't want to keep risking crits and the Omni boost, once I see that Laleep isn't trying to KO Crash with Sludge Bombs and instead going through Recover, I decide I'm probably safe to go through a Bullet Seed. So I get off some okay damage with Bullet Seed and then expect the Laleep to go through another Recover again, like it did the last time I sent Crash in. Oh, okay, well that's just a bit rude, isn't it? I guess there was a % chance of Laleep either going for Sludge Bomb or Recover. Rest in peace, Crash, you were taken from us too soon. That's really annoying because I had planned to use Crash through a couple of other Pokemon during this fight, but I had no choice but to carry on. Even more annoyingly, I then send out Torna, expecting to outspeed and finish off the stupid rock plant, but then its Citrus Berry activates, meaning I have to switch back into Baby T. Baby T then takes an Ancient Power that is mostly healed by a berry before the Laleep finally goes down to Poison. Okay, one major error so far, but we're still in this. Up next is Lunatone, who is a problem because it's got really high defensive stats and could put my whole team to sleep with Hypnosis. I'm pretty sure Pura will be a good counter though, so I switch her in on a Confusion that she's immune to. Perfect. Unfortunately though, there is one major thing I didn't consider here. Nuzleaf kind of sucks. Sucks so bad that a Rock Slide from the moon does about as much as a super effective Stab Bullet Seed. This could be an issue. I decide my best bet is probably to carry on attacking though, and thankfully my Nuzleaf is able to survive on 2 HP after taking another Rock Slide, and then crits a Bullet Seed, taking down the moon. While that crit might have seemed lucky, I don't think it made a huge difference in the long run. Fourth is Anorith, which is probably one of the least scary Pokemon in this gym fight. Unfortunately though, while I'm fairly sure both of my water types can handle this stupid thing, I do need to get them in safely, and that means staying in and watching as Pura is cut in half by an X-Scissor. Rest in peace, Kitty, you did your best. With Pura down, I'm able to get Cortex in for 3, who immediately brings the bug down to 50% with a single water gun. Perfect, just need to survive one hit here then. Jesus Christ, that was close. Suppose that's my luck payment for Cortex taking down the Nosepass so well. At the very least, I'm able to outspeed and must have been speed tying. Rest in peace, Cortex, you got fairly unlucky there with a crit and then losing the speed tie, but I suppose that just evens out my luck that I've been having throughout the rest of this fight. If nothing else, Torna is able to come in and finish off the Anorith with a single water pulse. Right, we've got 2 more Pokemon to deal with, and we've won, the first of which is Relicanth. The fossil fish isn't actually that scary as long as you have a grass type, and despite mine being damaged, I'm able to send in Baby T on a hard rock throw, and then KO with a single Vine Whip. Well, shit, that's just unlucky. That really should have been a one-shot, but because Baby T missed the KO by what looks like 1 HP, a second rock throw takes her down. Rest in peace, Baby T, you just couldn't pull through there at the end. To make matters worse, I can't even one-shot with Torna because a Citrus Berry heals the Relicanth to just above 50%. This is getting dicey. A Yawn landing here could end this fight, but luckily Torna avoids the attack. Who knew a Love Heart fish could be so useful, because thanks to that miss, Torna is able to pick up another KO while only taking another weak Rock Slide. Last but certainly not least then is Shuckle, and we really aren't out of the woods just yet. This Shuckle is extremely annoying to deal with. It has incredibly high defense like any other Shuckle, but you know what move you don't want to see on a very defensive Pokemon? Curse. That's right, this Shuckle is going to increase its attack and defense every single turn, and it also has Rollout, which means it could build up damage while you chip away at it, and on top of all of that it has Toxic, just so you'll slowly die as you attempt to KO this bulky monster. I would be in a really bad position here, but thankfully Torna is actually the perfect Pokemon to deal with this Shuckle. Torna can't do a lot of damage by herself, but because of the way the Pokemon AI works, the Shuckle is very likely to try and increase its attack as it doesn't see the KO into my fish. That's perfect for me, because every couple of turns I can go through a charm, lowering the Shuckle's attack and basically baiting it into consistently using Curse. This allows my fish to survive long enough to slowly wear down the Shuckle and eventually take the win. Okay, we made it through our first gym battle, only cost us 2/3 of our team. I'll be honest, if I had to pick 2 Pokemon to have made it through that fight, it probably wouldn't have been Love Disc and Nosepass. Oh well, no choice but to carry on, but with Brawly on the horizon, the chances of getting much further in this run aren't looking great. Got to just push forward though and hope for the best, so after beating up a Wingull Thief and evolving Papu into Flaffy, I'm able to head towards Dewford Town. Now, I don't get a huge amount of encounters before our next gym challenge, so I'm really hoping to get lucky and find something useful. Firstly, I fish up a Clam Pearl on Route 107, and surprisingly, my clam isn't awful as it's got some decent defensive stats. Next, in Dewford Town itself, I find a Makuhita, who unfortunately is kind of underwhelming and won't be very useful for the next gym. Down to my last 2 encounters then, really hoping for something good, and I end up with a Seal and an Aron. Well, I think I might be a bit screwed here. It also doesn't bode well that the trainers before Brawly actually proved to be fairly difficult, and I lose Seal and Nosepass to some bad luck. On top of this, I also overlevel a few of my Pokemon, meaning I'm really limited on what I can bring to Brawly and his fighting types. Now, because I'm so limited on Pokemon here, I have a feeling my only slim chance of getting through this fight is to get off whatever damage I can, and then maybe finish off Brawly's Pokemon with Aku. I'm not confident going into this then, but here goes nothing. So Brawly starts with Hitmontop, and I start with Aku. Because of Intimidate and Fake Out, I immediately switch into Oxide, who tanks the Fake Out. I then switch into Papu on a critical hit. Okay, I'm gonna be straight with you, game. I'm really not in the position to get unlucky here and still pull through, so if you kindly give me a break, I'd appreciate it. At the very least, Papu does survive a Rock Slide on the following turn, but is only able to hit back with a stupidly weak Thunder Shock. I was hoping that would do more damage, I won't lie to you. Papu is able to get off another Thunder Shock though, as the Hitmontop doesn't get the KO on the following turn because it goes for a secret power for some reason. You tried your best, Papu, and that's what matters, I suppose, but I now have to let you go down, so I watch as my sheep gets punted in the face. All part of the plan, however, as I can now bring Aku in to KO with a single peck, or Hitmontop will survive and land a really hard Rock Slide. For f***'s sake, Aku, you could have learned any other flying move and maybe I would have had a chance of winning this. Peck sucks. At least Hitmontop goes down on the following turn. Second is Hitmonlee, so I switch back into Oxide on a Rock Slide. I then switch into Hog on a really hard rolling kick. Hog then has to take another stupidly hard kick to the face before hitting back with a single Water Pulse. At least Hog survives one more rolling kick, meaning I can get off one last Water Pulse. Oh, I'll be honest, I didn't even know that could flinch. Right, okay, well, f*** you, game. Because of that flinch, I'm now going to have to risk Coco here as Aku can't KO from this range. Coco immediately outspeeds and lands a critical hit, Flame Wheel, that very nearly KOs before surviving a Rock Slide. Even when I get lucky though in this ROM hack, the game immediately always says no, because Hitmonlee basically heals back all of the damage with the Citrus Berry. Right, I didn't want to have to risk a bounce missing here, but at this point I don't think I had the choice, and thankfully bounce connects, getting us our second hard-fought KO of the match. This isn't exactly going well, is it? Third is Hitmonchan, and I'm hoping that I might be able to get off another strong bounce here, but unfortunately Hitmonchan says no and immediately KOs my pony with a punch to the face. Rest in peace, Coco. I'm basically screwed at this point, but I'm hoping that maybe Oxide can survive one hit here as his defense is so high, so I send in Oxide and he actually takes the hit, meaning he's able to get off some okay damage with a headbutt. He is then KO'd on the following turn, but maybe he's done enough to where Aku can pick up another KO with a peck? Of course not. Surprisingly though, my big chicken does survive, meaning my best shot of somehow pulling off an impossible win here is sending out Polar, as Hitmonchan isn't guaranteed to go through a Rock Slide with Aku so low. My gamble actually pays off, meaning I'm able to get Polar in for 3 and then KO with a quick attack. Fourth is Meditite, and I'm thinking maybe if I get lucky with Confusion here, I might be able to push through, so I go through a Sweet Kiss and it's holding a Lumberry, of course. Oops, well we weren't going to win this anyway, and now we're definitely not going to win this, as Polar is KO'd with a single Rock Slide, and then Aku suffers the same fate on the following turn. Okay, let's evaluate. We gave it our all during that fight, but we did get slightly unlucky, and we really just didn't have the tools to handle Brawly. Hopefully we'll have more options in attempt 2, that just requires getting through Roxanne more efficiently. Let's go see if we can manage that. So I won't go over every single encounter I get during attempt 2, but I will mention a couple of important ones. Firstly, I catch a Hoot Hoot, who I'm hoping will be able to pull its weight against Brawly. Second, I get another potentially important Brawly encounter, a Magikarp. A Gyarados with Intimidate might just be what I need to push through that second gym fight. Once I reach Roxanne, my team is slightly different than last time, but all of my Pokemon basically have the same jobs. Gloom has replaced Weeping Bell, Geodude has replaced Nosepass, and Makuhita has replaced Wartortle. Let's go see then if my new Pokemon can do any better against this Thirst Gym. This time against Nosepass, I decide to start with Brio, the Geodude, because if I get lucky with Magnitudes, I might be able to get a quick KO here. So after taking a Seismic Toss, Geodude hits back with a massive Magnitude 9 that unfortunately just misses the KO, leaving the Nosepass on what looks like 5 HP. I suppose I wasn't going to get super lucky against the Nosepass 2 times in a row. Geodude only manages to land a Magnitude 5 on the following turn, meaning he's brought down to 5 HP before landing one final Magnitude 8 for the KO. Okay, annoying to have Brio already so low, but at the very least, the nose is down. So Anorith is second, so I switch into Coco. Coco takes a massive amount from an X-Scissor on the switch, but a berry heals my fish out of KO range. This means Coco only has to take one more hard X-Scissor before KOing with 2 Water Pulses. Third is the ever annoying Lileep, and my plan is pretty similar to attempt 1, Toxic Stalling. So I switch into Gloom on a Giga Drain before landing a Toxic. Now unfortunately, I don't really have many good switches like I did in attempt 1, so instead of switch stalling, I decide to stay in with Uka and try and get off acid defense drops. Annoyingly, after getting off a few acids, Uka fails to lower the Leap's defense, and then the Lileep gets an Omni boost. This could get bad really fast. I do then get very close to KOing the Lileep with a Magical Leaf after Uka takes another hard Ancient Power, but Poison just misses the KO, activating Lileep's Citrus Berry, fully healing the plant. God, Citrus Berries are such overkill at this point in the game. Now I'm put in the position where I don't have a choice but to let Uka go down on the following turn to get Coco in for 3. Rest in peace, Uka, you tried your best. Once Coco is in, she's able to get off a Water Pulse before also going down to an Ancient Power. That was a pretty big misplay in hindsight, because if Lileep had KO'd with the Giga Drain there, I would now be screwed. Luckily it didn't though, so Crash is able to come in as the Lileep goes down to Poison. Fourth to Roxanne is Shuckle, so I start going for Bullet Seeds. Bullet Seed does a ridiculously low amount of damage as Shuckle sets up a curse. Okay, that clearly didn't work. New plan. Let's try something else. I switch into Crunch and start spamming Force Palms as the Shuckle starts setting up, and eventually I'm forced to switch again thanks to Toxic. I decide on Polar, who is the least useful remaining member of my team, and then I start spamming Bullet Seeds again. Thanks to some really good paralysis luck, Polar is able to survive long enough to very slowly wear down the Shuckle. 2 more to go then, the first of which is Relicanth. Thankfully, this fossil fish isn't an issue, as Polar is able to outspeed and KO with a single Bullet Seed. All that leaves then is Lunatone. I decide my best chance of getting through this fight is letting Polar go down, so I stay in and salute as Polar takes one for the team. Rest in peace. Polar's sacrifice lets Crunch come in for 3, and then Crash is able to take down the Lunatone with a couple of Bullet Seeds. Okay, well I said if I wanted any hope against Brawly, I'd have to do better in this fight, and I survived with 1 more Pokemon than last time, so that's kind of an improvement, right? Moving on to Dewford Town, I actually have a tiny bit of hope that I might actually be able to get the second gym badge this time around. That's because I find a Tyrogue in Dewford Town that evolves into a Hitmontop. Along with Gyarados, that gives me 2 Intimidate users, which I think is actually kind of huge to Brawly. I also catch a Spoink, which isn't amazing, but I'm not going to turn my nose up at a Psychic type. With 2 Intimidate users, Noctowl, and Spoink then, I'm feeling a lot more confident going into this gym fight than I was last time. Let's see if we've got what it takes. So Brawly starts with Hitmontop, and I start with Penta. What's great about using Penta, the Hitmontop, and Tiny, the Gyarados, to Intimidate spam here is that they both bait moves the other resists. So whenever I switch into Gyarados, he takes a resisted fighting move, and when I switch back into Penta, he has to take a resisted Rock Slide. With a bit of luck then, this might allow me to completely walk all over this gym. So I start switching between my Golden Boys until eventually the Hitmontop is at -6 attack. Penta can then easily KO with rolling kicks and quick attacks. Second is Poliwrath, so my plan is the same. Only problem I have here is that Poliwrath has 2 moves that aren't affected by Intimidate, and this means Gyarados very nearly goes down to a crit. Luckily he survives though, and then I can simply switch into Crash, who KOs with a Bullet Seed. Third is Hitmonlee, and because Tiny is so low, I'm only able to bring the kicking monster down to -4. This means Liz is able to get off 1 attack for good damage, but then she is very nearly KO'd, meaning she's probably not going to be used for the rest of this fight. Luckily I've got the ever reliable Crash, who after being brought low enough to activate Overgrow, KOs the Hitmonlee with a Bullet Seed. Fourth is Hitmonchan, and my team is getting fairly beat up at this point. Penta can still take a few hits though, meaning I'm able to bring the Hitmonchan down to -4 attack before sending in Rue. Rue has to take a couple of weak attacks, but eventually he's able to KO with Water Pulses and Clamps. Fifth is Meditite, so after a couple of Intimidates with just Penta, Papu is able to come in and finish off the Punching Baby with an Aerial Ace. Okay, that just leaves one last Pokemon, and while I've had no deaths so far, I'm in a really bad position. Everyone on my team is very close to death, and that means no more Intimidate switching. I'm not sure if Papu can 1v1 the Sumo here, but I don't have much of the choice, so I stay in and take a Fake Out before outspeeding and landing a decent Aerial Ace. This looks like it's the end for Papu then, as a Rock Slide connects, and my Owl survives on 1 HP. Papu, you absolute legend. Noctowl surviving here means I can get off 1 more Aerial Ace before going down, and now that the Hariyama is so low, an Overgrow boosted Bullet Seed from Crash is able to finish off Brawly's last Pokemon. Not sure how that would have gone had Papu gone down before getting off the second Aerial Ace, but I don't have to think about that because my Owl seriously came in clutch. Somehow, in what was a very close fight, we've gotten our second gym badge. With our second gym badge won then, our reward is a couple of evolutions. Next, I'm able to make my way to Slateport and grab some more encounters. I'm able to grab a Squirtle and a Voltorb, both of whom aren't exactly what I'm looking for an electric gym coming up, but hey, more bodies for the meat grinder I guess. Heading north, after an easy Team Aqua encounter, I do get challenged by May. You'd think this fight would be super difficult considering the rest of the game, but it's actually not that bad. I then have to fight Wally and his level 70 Rolts. Yeah, you heard me right. Luckily it's not that difficult, and after picking up a Magnemite and an Ariados, I'm ready for the gym. Just got to get past Guitarist Kirk, who I think should actually be the gym leader here because his team is stacked. Thankfully, Brio is able to KO the Voltorb, but his Elekid has Ice Punch, so I'm forced to switch into Cortex. A Thunderbolt then does massive damage and paralyzes, while Cortex only hits back with a Flame Wheel that does less than half. Right, okay, either Elekid has been given a buff or Cortex sucks. Either way, I now need to switch switch again. Luckily, I've got Crash, who can come in on a Thunderbolt, take a Fire Punch, and then KO with a Bullet Seed and Quick Attack. Next, the Kirk is his Loudred, which is pretty threatening because it has Hyper Voice and Water Pulse. Penta hasn't got time to deal with this though, so after taking a Hyper Voice, he KOs with a single rolling kick. Because the Thun never stops with Kirk, he next sends out his Ludicolo. This thing would be annoying, but luckily I've got Oxide, who takes down the Ludicolo with a couple of Signal Beams after being brought really low by Water Pulses. That just leaves Golbat, and if you've been wondering why I've been going so in depth on this random trainer, it's because this is about to get really ugly. Golbat has an absolutely ridiculous moveset, but thankfully I've got Rilla. Rilla comes in on a Heat Wave that does massive damage, but that's fine because I can retaliate with a Wild Charge that's super effective, has a higher base power, and is stab, unlike Heat Wave. You'd think with all of these different factors in play then, that this Wild Charge would do more than the Heat Wave I just took, and I mean it does, but just barely, because my Pokemon are clearly just arse, and this means Rilla goes down to a Sludge Bomb. With Rilla down, my best bet from this point is sending in Penta, because the Golbat actually doesn't know any flying type moves. So I get off the Quick Attack, meaning if we land one more attack, we've won this stupid fight, but of course I get confused 2 times in a row, meaning I lose another Pokemon to this Golbat. Okay, this is getting really silly, but it's not the end of the world, because I can now send in Crash, who of course KOs with the Quick Attack, right? You've got to be kidding. I'm going to be honest, I was fairly salty at the fact that this Golbat then proceeds to sweep my entire team, ending attempt 2. And when I say I was fairly salty, I mean I still am. Fuck you Kirk, and fuck your Golbat. Well, looks like we're on our final attempt then. Let's see if we can make it to our 3rd gym battle this time around. So the most notable changes in attempt 3 before Roxanne is that I find a Growlithe with Intimidate, which could be very useful against Roxanne and Brawly. I also find a Sunkern, which I can immediately evolve into Sunflora. Sunkern is actually really useful because it has growth, meaning I could just set up Sweep if I get lucky. Let's jump in then and see if I can beat Roxanne 3 times in a row. So this time around I start with Kong against the Nose. Kong actually very nearly one-shots with the Bubble Beam before taking a Thunder Wave that is cured by a held berry. Of course Nosepass also heals back all of the damage I just did with the Citrus Berry. Back at square one really. A second Bubble Beam then fails to KO, meaning Kong gets paralyzed. What's worse, the Nosepass then explodes, doing huge damage. Right, Nose is down, but not a clean start to this fight. Second is Anorith, so I switch into Brio through an Intimidate drop. I then switch into Coco, hoping to get an easy KO, but of course, my fish gets crit, leaving her on 2 HP. I decide it's best just to let Coco go down here, because really, when has Goldeen ever been useful? With Coco down, I switch into Polar, and start going the Rock Tombs. Even with Intimidate, Brick Break from Anorith still hits really hard, but my Nose survives and picks up our 2nd KO. Third then is Laleep, so I implement my master plan. By switching between Brio and Cortex, I'm eventually able to intimidate the Laleep to -6 attack. I'm then able to send in Cortex, set up to +5 special attack, fully heal myself with the Synthesis, and then 3-ly sweep Roxanne's whole team. Shame about losing Goldeen, but honestly that went pretty smoothly, all things considered. Let's hope Brawly goes just as well. I do manage to pick up another Magikarp, which means once again I'm going to go into this fight with 2 Intimidate users. Unfortunately though, Growlithe and Gyarados are both weak to Rock Slide, so they don't have as much synergy as Gyarados and Hitmontop did. Because of this, I decide that my best chances of getting through this fight really smoothly would be setting up Sunflora again. So Brawly starts with Hitmontop and I start with Brio. I immediately start switching between Gyarados and Nosepass, which means it takes slightly longer, but eventually Hitmontop is brought down to -6 attack. That means I can send Cortex in, get to +5 special attack, and then KO with a Mega Drain. Second is Poliwrath, so really need to avoid a crit or a freeze here. Forgot about Hypnosis. I gave Cortex a Cherry Berry to avoid being paralyzed, but I completely overlooked Hypnosis. Really need my Sunflower to wake up here, or all of my setup would have been for nothing, and he wakes up just before he's KO'd, thank god. Third is Hitmonlee, so should be an easy KO here. Okay, well, just one more Mega Drain, and I get crit and KO'd. Well, suppose that was always a risk with this plan, but I was hoping to get through a few more of Brawly's Pokemon here, before eventually my Sunflora went down. Well, back to plan B, Intimidate. I'm able to get off a few Intimidates off on the Hitmonlee before sending in Crash, who is able to KO after being brought down into Overgrow range. Fourth is Hitmonchan, so I decide to start Intimidate switching again. Eventually the Boxing Gloved Menace is brought down to -6 before I then send in Hog. Hog then has to take 2 weak Rock Slides before KOing with a few Aerial Aces. 2 more to go and we're through this. Meditite is up next, who is very nearly KO'd by a single Aerial Ace. Unfortunately, that was a mistake on my part, as Hog is then KO'd by a Rock Slide. Totally on me, assumed Aerial Ace would one-shot, and at the very least, Hog would survive one attack. Rest in peace, Hog. At least with Hog down, Crash is able to come in and KO with the Bullet Seed. That just leaves Hariyama, so I switch into Torna to start getting off Intimidates. I have to start switching between Brio and Torna because my nose is too low to take any more hits. This is obviously a bit risky because of crits, but I'm sure it will be fine. Just have to push through Brawly's last Pokemon. Well, I'm now in a bad position, so I have no choice but to try and get some damage off with Growlithe before sending out Crash, meaning I lose another Pokemon. Crash is then able to come in and just barely win us the match thanks to a crit, but now we're in real trouble because we don't have many Pokemon left and we somehow got to find a way to deal with Watson. Annoyingly, I actually lose the footage between Brawly and Watson, so you don't get to see my epic defeat of Kirk. At the very least, I do actually make it to Watson this time, but I'll be completely honest, this isn't looking good. Firstly, I did get a couple of half-decent new team members in Roselia, Dustox, and Donphan, but Donphan doesn't have a single ground-type attack, and Dustox and Roselia's stats are kind of a bit... Looking at Watson's team, I'm really not sure how you're meant to do this fight without getting very particular encounters. First problem is that all of Watson's Pokemon are incredibly fast and have been given Thunderbolt, the best electric-type move in the game. So if you don't resist electric types, you're gonna die. But it's not like bringing electric resistances help much because all of Watson's Pokemon carry water, ice and grass moves, meaning any ground or grass Pokemon you try to bring to this fight are also just gonna die. As you can tell, I'm full of confidence going into this fight. I've done my best to bring Pokemon that might be able to push through Watson's team, so let's go see if we can get this 3rd gym badge. Watson starts with Jolteon and I start with Isabella. I'm hoping that Isabella with Synthesis can survive long enough to bring this spiky boy down, so I start going for Magical Leafs as Jolteon starts trying to paralyze with Thunder Wave. Thanks to a bit of luck, Isabella is actually able to get through this without being paralyzed and on basically full HP. Good start. Maybe this won't be as bad as I thought. Second is Lantern, which is going to be annoying. Not only is this stupid zappy fish really tanky, it has Ice Beam and Leftovers. I decide setting up Light Screen here might be the best play, so I switch through Oxide into Crunch. Crunch is then able to set up a Light Screen while only taking a Surf. I then heal with a Moonlight, which is a bit of a mistake because it means Crunch is paralyzed. I should probably switch now, but instead I decide to try and stall long enough to reset up Light Screen. All this does is waste a load of time thanks to constantly being paralyzed, but eventually I'm able to reset up Light Screen, go through another Moonlight, and then finally do what I should have done all along and switch into Crash. Lantern is tanky enough to take a few magical leaves, but Crash is able to bring the zappy fish really low without taking any hits thanks to Lantern trying to paralyze. Before I can get one more hit off though to finish off the Lantern, Light Screen ends. I'd rather not take an Ice Beam here, so instead I switch into Oxide and then KO with a high jump kick. Okay, a lot of hard work for only 2 KOs so far, but we're getting through this, kind of. Next is Electabuzz, so I switch into Aku on a weak Psychic. Now Aku can't do a lot back to Electabuzz here, but luckily he's got Mirror Coat, which means after taking a Thunderbolt, I should be able to hit back with double damage and KO, right? Oh no, I've made a horrible mistake. Turns out I didn't have Mirror Coat, instead I misread the move and I had Magic Coat instead. I made this mistake because I didn't even realize Magic Coat was a move that existed. Well, my inability to read has kind of screwed me over. I tried to stay in with Aku and get off a Confuse Ray to maybe pull this back in my favor, but the game is having none of that because Electabuzz crits with a second Thunderbolt, KOing my pig. Rest in peace, buddy. I'm now in a bit of an awkward spot. I send in my Donphan and do as much damage as I can with Endeavor and Ice Shard, but it's not enough, meaning Wawa, the Dolphin, goes down. Rest in peace, Wawa. I really wish you had a ground type attack. This is starting to go south really quickly. I'm able to bring back a tiny bit of momentum by KOing with Oxide on the following turn, but this still is not looking good, especially because up next is Ampharos, another seriously tanky Pokemon with Leftovers. I really don't have any outs at this point, so I decide to stay in and get off what damage I can with a high jump kick before going down to a Thunderbolt. Or Oxide will live. You bloody trooper. Oxide surviving means he's able to get off another high jump kick that brings the Ampharos really low. I'm not expecting to win here, but I'm thinking maybe maybe now Crash can come in and KO with a magical leaf? Unfortunately not. Because of paralysis, Crash is outsped and KO'd with a fire punch, and then my remaining 2 Pokemon meet the same fate. Well, that's it then. We couldn't quite manage to get that 3rd gym badge, but we gave it a pretty good go. So after 3 attempts, how do I feel about Emerald Kaizo? Well, it's clearly not built to be fair, but it's actually surprisingly fun. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me dip my toe into what is an incredibly hard challenge, and who knows, maybe if you guys really want me to give it another go, I can retry this at some point. That would require a lot of likes and subscriptions from this video though, hint hint. Anyway, again, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all next time.